Radio is broadcast on LSL Podcast Channel. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel.
Let not your heart be troubled. You are listening to the Sean Hannity Radio Show podcast. All right, so I have insomnia, but I've never slept better. And what's changed? Just a pillow. It's had such a positive impact on my life. And, of course, I'm talking about My Pillow. I fall asleep faster, I stay asleep longer, and now you can, too. Just go to MyPillow.com or call 800-919-6090. Use the promo code Hannity, and Mike Lindell, the inventor of My Pillow, has the special 4-pack. Now, you get 40% off 2 My Pillow Premiums and 2 Go Anywhere pillows. Now, My Pillow is made here in the USA, has a 60-day unconditional money-back guarantee, and a 10-year warranty. Go to MyPillow.com right now or call 800-919-6090, promo code Hannity, to get Mike Lindell's special 4-pack offer. You get 2 My Pillow premium pillows and 2 Go Anywhere pillows for 40% off, and that means once those pillows arrive, you start getting the kind of peaceful and restful and comfortable and deep healing and recuperative sleep that you've been craving and you certainly deserve. MyPillow.com, promo code Hannity. You will love this pillow. Glad you're with us. Happy Friday. Write down our toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of this extravaganza. It is 800-941-SEAN if you want to join us. We got a lot coming up in the course of the program today. One of the segments we're going to do is about more guns, less crime. The statistics bear all of that out in spite of everything this corrupt, lying media, ideological media tells you every day. You're going to meet a hero. This young kid so blew me away last night. I went to the hospital. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Thomas Gunderson, and he was the young man that met the president, the first lady, and he'd been shot in the leg, and he actually put on Facebook, "I will never lie down when the president of this great country comes to shake my hand. There may be plenty of issues in this country, but I will always respect my country, my president, my flag. Shot in the leg or not, I will stand to show my president the respect he deserves." Got a chance to interview this young man and his family last night, and pretty amazing, and much, much more. Also following Hurricane Nate. It looks like right now it's headed for Baton Rouge. We're sending our love on down to Baton Rouge today. We're going to give you an update. The official meteorologist of the Sean Hannity Show. For a while, he was becoming a co-host, Joe Bastardi. Oh, man, this has been a rough season. You know, this has been, I can't even explain. I took the red eye back last night. We got back late, early in the morning, New York time, and red eyes I always find them rough. But, I just spent a lot of time on the flight. I'm thinking in my mind that, in the worst of times, because it felt in Vegas a little, and I'm not comparing, so just understand, I'm talking about a feeling I had, that it felt a lot like 9/11 in this sense. And the sense that in the worst of times, you see some of the best in people. In other words, you've got this evil SOB, no value of human life, an enigma at this point, and a mystery at this point. We'll update you on all the latest news and information in a little bit. And just with total abandon and just callous, pure evil is firing at a crowd of 20,000 people, that are basically sitting ducks, that are having fun. And an hour earlier were in unison singing God Bless America with their lights held up, their cell phones held up. And it was an amazing moment with Big and Rich. And as I was there on the ground in Vegas, then you hear all of these stories of heroism. And you meet these people that I've had the chance to meet over there reporting on this issue. I've always said the job of a talk show is not one-dimensional. I mean, sometimes we just report the news, straight up news. Sometimes we give opinions. Sometimes we host debate. It's multifaceted in as much as what we do. We're not rigidly saying that we are fair, balanced, and objective. Sometimes I'm just there to get facts and news and information, and that's part of being a journalist, or some would say advocacy journalist or opinion journalist. But when you meet, it's very humbling to meet people, everyday people, and hear the stories of everyday Americans that when their fellow Americans were in need, just like on 9/11, you have a group of people. You have firemen, You have paramedics. You have policemen. You have others that everybody rightly is trying to get out of these buildings in New York. And they're racing down the stairs. They're racing to get to an elevator. It's not working. And they're running down the stairs. And in the other direction are a group of very unique, selfless people that are going in the direction to face danger and to save lives. And they're just incredible people. And we learned that. I mean, you could hear it in the dispatch call when the policemen, they actually got to the 31st floor in 7 minutes because two cops happened to be covering another issue at the Mandalay Bay. And then they made it up to the 31st floor. And then you hear the police scanner saying, all right, we're about to breach. And they know on the other side of that door is somebody that they think, at least, because it sounded like it, has an automatic weapon, and he's going to be firing bullets at them. And they don't know how many people are in there. And they're not saying to themselves in that moment they can die, but deep in the back of their head, they're smart, they're trained, they know they could die. And they do that anyway. And then you have the stories and one after another of people that were at the concert. You know, one that really stands out in my mind. I met this beautiful young girl. She's 20 years old. We put her on TV the other night. And she had just finished her chemotherapy, just got some good news that after all that brutal treatment, and for those of you that don't know a whole lot about chemo, they basically kill you to save you. Anyway, it was like one of her first events. She was getting outside, trying to get her life back up and running again. Her scans are clean. She's happy. She likes country music. She goes to the concert. This event begins to unfold. She tries to rightly with her mom run for safety. And she just, because of the chemo, she's just not as strong as she normally would be. But it was fine because there were other people, police and off-duty police that were there to help her, saw her in need, and they helped her. And then you look at the still images of people clutching their children and trying to protect them and hold them, that if anyone's going to get shot, it's them. And you see boyfriends doing that with girlfriends. And then you hear story after story about the incredible heroism. And then you see what the police did and the fire people did and the first responders did. And then you get to the hospital aspect of this. And I got a chance to spend a couple of hours at the hospital and meet a lot of the nurses and the emergency room people and the doctors. I mean, these people saved hundreds of lives. And everyone that was off and not working immediately came into work. It just so happens this is the trauma hospital of Nevada. And then they all did their thing. It's just incredible. So in that sense, the worst 9/11, it brings greatness out of people. The worst in Vegas brings the best out of Vegas. And so Ethan, anyway, put together a little montage of some of the heroes. And I'm saying this in one political context because it does need to be said. You know, in light of what has been happening in the NFL, in light of what's been happening there, you know, remember Colin Kaepernick is praising Castro, a murdering dictator. You know, remember the original anthem protest in 2016. He affirmed to reporters at the time that he refused to stand. He didn't want to honor the flag of the United States of America. And it goes, and then he had the socks with police depicted as pigs. And then I think about Ferguson, Missouri, and the rush to judgment, and Darren Wilson. You know, it was assumed that was hands up, don't shoot, and that he just killed this man, shot him in the back, they said on day one, cold blood. None of it was true. And so many people believed a lie. Nobody would give a policeman the benefit of the doubt. Turns out that he was exonerated because of all the witnesses that affirmed everything that he did and said that day. And the same thing with Freddie Gray in Baltimore. It was assumed those 6 cops were going to jail. It wasn't true. And maybe the next time something happens, and maybe we need a little time, and we could just give these people the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, Ethan put together a montage of some of the heroic moments, and just to put together, and this is what I love the most about this country. And it's not politicians, I can tell you that. I have contempt for them. And it's not Hollywood, and it's not these celebrities, and it's not all these people that have their gated communities and they have their security guards and they have their protection, but they don't want us to have the ability to have the same. It's the people that work hard. They make this country great. Play by the rules. They make the country great. Raise their kids, responsible Americans. They obey the laws, pay their taxes, and they just want a nice house, a decent house in a safe neighborhood, a decent car, a vacation once a year. Those were the ones that stood up and stepped up and inspired me and inspired all of us this week. Listen.
I went back because I'm a nurse and I just felt that I had to. So I went to 3 different scenes. There were so many people, just normal citizens, doctors, cops, paramedics, like nurses, just off duty. Everyone was just communicating and working together. It was completely horrible, but it was absolutely amazing to see all the people come together.
Most people started scattering and they climbed the fence, but I had to stay with my buddies. So we got him over the fence once the fires stopped and slid him under a stage so we were safe.
I mean, I owe that man my life because from the moment I got hit, he was the first one to actually help me stop the bleeding. He never left my side at all. And I remember helping me get in the back of a pickup truck, a red pickup truck with another young lady that had a gunshot wound. And kept telling him, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And he kept saying, you're not going to die. I got you. Look at me. You're not going to die. He even said it as they took me out and put me onto the concrete in front of a patrol car that I wasn't going to die. We even talked about the moment where he actually put his finger inside the wound just to stop it. It's stuff like that I won't forget. I owe him my life.
I saw a field with a bunch of white trucks. I tested my luck to see if any of them had keys in it, and the first one that we tried opening had the key sitting right there, and started looking through people to take to the hospital. There was just too many, and it was overwhelming how much blood was everywhere. Once we dropped them off, we were like, well, let's go back for round 2 and go get some more. I transported probably 20 to 30 people injured to the hospital.
People were hitting the floor, people were running. Myself and a few of my other partners, we were trying to help people keep low instead of standing up while the firing was going on. One gentleman, unfortunately, happened to get shot, and 2 of the patients that he was with carried him to EMT and EMS. He was out, and myself and a few other security guards, some other civilians, we all gave hands helping transport bodies. There was a lot of people that were shot, unfortunately.
Amy McCaslin and Crystal Goddard were shielded from bullets from a man they had never met. He was shot as he held them, bleeding on a McCaslin shirt.
We were getting away, and we came across him. He was in the bed of a pickup truck. There's a belt, a makeshift tourniquet. It was kind of around his knee. It was completely wrong spot, and I walked up there, and he was actively bleeding. So I adjusted the belt, got it up where it should be, tightened it down. We stopped the bleeding. I think we hung out there for 10, 15 minutes, and some savior in a pickup truck came and said, do we need a ride? I said, yeah. We threw them all in the bed of the truck, and we took off to the hospital.
There's a gurney, and the tables that were inside where his gurney is as well. They were using everything we can. We're using the rails between the partitions in between. We were carrying bodies out with that as well. So I was just trying to get bodies inside to pull them outside so we can do some kind of triage.
So we saw 200 patients at Sunrise Hospital. Most of them came in probably within the first hour and a half. I mean, the job that our staff did, physicians, nurses, volunteers, ancillary staff, was just absolutely amazing. The response that we got, we had 100 physicians show up that night after they were called. We had 100 nurses.
People were telling me, just leave, they'll come back for the survivors, and I was like, I'm not leaving him.
All right, as we roll along, Sean Hannity Show on a Friday, 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. That was very well done, Jason and Ethan, and we'll put it up on our website because I know probably many of you would want to hear it again. We have another hurricane coming. We'll get an update from Joe Bastardi. You're going to meet this young man, Thomas Gunderson, who had met the president, and his comments and him standing, even having been shot in the leg, was beyond inspiring. And I'm not sitting for my president. I'm standing for my president. One funny story. It's not funny in one sense, but it's really a Marine stole a truck. He stole the truck for a great reason. He wanted to get shooting victims to the hospital. Now he got a message from the owner of the truck. Now, the Iraq vet's name is Taylor Winston. Anyway, he sprang into action. He did what he had to do Sunday night. He improvised. He was helping save lives. Anyway, he ended up, it's not stealing. He borrowed a pickup truck to transport victims to the hospital. And he was able to find an empty truck. Keys were inside after the gunfire. And anyway, at the festival, so he drove the truck back and forth. And he, got a lot of people to the hospital. Anyway, so the guy that owns the truck, 3 days after, the truck owner sends this guy a message and says, "Hey, Taylor, told you might have the keys to my truck. All I want is the key. Other than that, this is all water under the bridge. How are the people you are hauling doing?" That's such a cool story, because he goes, "Oh, I got your keys. No worries. When do you want to meet me for the keys? We're at the Monte Carlo. I've got your truck." But and then he goes on to say, "Your truck was extremely important. It helped save lives. I don't know if they all made it," he said. This guy had enlisted in the military when he was 17 years old, honorably discharged as a sergeant, said he thinks his military experience aided him in this situation. And like everybody that is a hero, they reject the hero label, and that there are a lot of brave, courageous people out there. And I'm glad I could steal your truck or borrow your truck in the meantime. By the way, the left saying, "Oh, Wayne LaPierre doesn't mean it about the bump stocks." We got that whole thing. I'm not sure whether I believe this Islamic State newsletter. There's no evidence to suggest that this madman, Stephen Paddock, was a member of ISIS or had converted, but we've got to look at all angles till we know more. We'll have a lot more on this and some liberal hypocrisy straight ahead. It's the Sean Hannity Show. Write down our toll-free number. We want to hear from you today, 800-941-SEAN, as we continue this Friday.
In fact, today, Hispanic American-owned small businesses are growing at a tremendous rate, especially among our Latinas. Raise your hands. Go ahead. It's tough to compete with, I will tell you. Who are leading the way in starting new businesses. You're leading the way. You're leading the way. You guys better get going. And once we pass our historic tax reform plan, and we are having not only reform, we're having the largest tax cuts in the history of our country. The history of our country. Does anybody in this room mind getting a massive tax cut? Does anybody? Does anybody object to paying less taxes? I don't see any hands. Okay.
All right, that's when the president was talking about businesses, Latino-owned businesses in America, and giving the tax cuts, which we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, a lot next week as this comes back up. We have a lot of other news we need to get to today. We have some liberal hypocrisy as it relates to Harvey Weinstein, and it's actually interesting all the money Democrats take. And it's also interesting, all these late-night comics that would be so critical of any conservative that does one thing wrong. Oh, their voices are so silent. I wonder why. Is it maybe because maybe he has power in Hollywood and would have the ability to help get them a job? I'm just thinking. Anyway, we're watching yet another hurricane emerge. This one, it looks like it may be headed towards Baton Rouge area, that area. And maybe even towards New Orleans. And joining us is the official meteorologist of the Sean Hannity Show. For a while, he was a co-host, but we have reduced his role in light of the lower hurricane volume we have. Our buddy Joe Bastardi is with us. How are you? I actually missed talking to you.
Well, I wish we could talk on nicer terms and nicer times, but it seems like every time
we actually do. You talk to me a lot about fitness.
Yeah, we do. And, when you have 10 minutes, I do have some suggestions for you to, get that rock hard body even rocky and harder, so you can fight all you want to fight.
You think anybody really wants to hear all this? This sounds so bad. Anyway, go ahead.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Look, you want to know something?
Well, you know I'm into martial arts and working out, and you are heavy into bodybuilding and working out, so it's,
And you know, Sean, it gives you an advantage in your job. I mean, because
it does. It gives you energy.
That's the first thing. But the second thing is, if you can take the those physical challenges, and then when you equate them to the mental challenge, okay, that you go over every day, preparation, understanding that thing, it just loops in perfectly. I tell that to people all the time, that, if you keep yourself pushing yourself like that, you simply do it on every single thing you do that's important to you.
It's so true. If you have discipline in your life, it usually carries into everything you do. Like, I can't imagine not getting up and working. I mean, I don't do it on the weekends, but when I'm in my work week,
I do.
I'm gone. I'm busy. I'm working. Well, you work 24/7 because you're looking at weather 24/7, and if not, you're studying what happened in 1872 in terms of the weather.
1886 is
that was the year. I shouldn't. Why did I start the conversation? 1886. Anyway, so how bad is this hurricane? Who's going to get hit? Looks like Baton Rouge for now. Maybe New Orleans.
Well, it's a tropical storm right now, and the landfall, I have it going in tomorrow night between 9 and midnight between Grand Isle, Louisiana, and Boothville. Now, that's at the mouth of the Mississippi, very close to the mouth of the Mississippi, the part of the delta that juts out. And then it comes up to the east. It looks to me like it's shifting a bit east, so that instead of going at Baton Rouge, it looks like it's going to come up to the east of New Orleans and more toward the Mississippi coast, but over that extreme eastern piece of Louisiana. And here's a problem. We've had this big high-pressure system that's led to delightful weather over the northeast for the last 5-6 days. But what that does to the south of it has been easterly winds just roaring all the way from South Bermuda into Florida, led to what we just saw in Florida this week, which was those big high tides that they had, the full moon plus the easterly winds. We get them on the East Coast a lot of times in the winter, but it's also doing it in the northern Gulf. So we are already having water levels 2 to 3 feet above normal back in toward New Orleans. And even though most of the pumps, they've been having problems with the pumps in New Orleans, the threat of flooding, even from a lesser system, is a big problem. So as this storm approaches tomorrow, the east and southeast winds are going to be increasing in the area to the east of the Louisiana coast, the area that juts down, the delta area. That's going to start pushing water back in there, and then the storm comes through tomorrow night. Fortunately, it's going to move very, very quickly, and right now I think the center is going to go east of New Orleans. And that's important because if it can go east of New Orleans and New Orleans doesn't get into the strong east to southeast wind that keeps driving water back into Pontchartrain, it would not be as bad as if the center came back a little bit further west in this particular case.
I know this is going to sound like a stupid question, and I should know the answer to it. I'm just assuming New Orleans got their act together and that they have created that there's not going to be any more breach if, God forbid, they get hit with a 3, 4, or 5 again.
No, well, if you got hit from the east-southeast, if a storm moved from, let's say, west of Tampa right into New Orleans from the east-southeast, there's a 3, 4, or 5, I don't know how you could stop that no matter what you do, because the water would just keep coming back. Remember, Katrina was only 9 to 13 feet in Pontchartrain. The 25-foot surge went up into Mississippi because Katrina head up to the east. Katrina was not the worst case scenario, but this storm compared to Katrina is very, very small. The problem we have with this, as far as I'm concerned, is the last 12 hours to landfall. It may try to intensify quite rapidly. Remember with how Harvey, it's not going to intensify as fast as Harvey, but the same kind of parameters, October style, are there, and so we do worry about it. It will be moving fast, though, so it has a limited amount of time to do that. So I think that you're in for a blow in southeast Louisiana, especially Mississippi over to Mobile. I think the worst parts of this storm are going to be from the mouth of the Mississippi up to Mobile, Alabama. That area in there gets it worse. But part of it comes back into New Orleans, and if we shift it west another 30, 40 miles, it would be a worse storm for New Orleans. The complicating factor in New Orleans, and I keep trying to get a handle on this, and I don't know exactly what the story is with the pumps there. I know that they've been repairing the pumps. and they've got to test them. But there have been a couple of big thunderstorms that have gone through New Orleans where there was a lot more flooding than normally occurred. So that is a problem in the New Orleans area.
Right. We're going to be watching over the weekend. We always appreciate it. And the reason we like to have Joe Bastardi on is because he can help you in this audience prepare and hopefully save lives and property, and you make good decisions for you and your family. And Joe has been really dead on accurate. You get a 100% accuracy rating this year, where others have been so wrong, and we always appreciate your insight. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me on. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. The president now, for a couple of days, he was speaking as the White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly. By the way, some are saying his text messages may have been hacked now for many, many months, which could have happened. We'll see the latest on that, which is pretty awful. I mean, I think privacy in the sense that we all believed was inherent in what we do now is at risk for everybody, and it's something we'll stay focused on and talk about often. Anyway, the president is now 2 days running given a cryptic and somewhat ominous warning with military leaders around him in a cabinet room setting yesterday and today. He gave this warning to reporters while he was taking pictures with the generals. And you guys know what this represents. He said maybe it's the calm before the storm.
You guys know what this represents?
Tell us, sir.
Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
Could be the calm before the storm.
What storm?
We have the world's great military people in this room, I will tell you that. And we're going to have a great evening. Thank you all for coming.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Give us a hint.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
What storm is that, Mr. President? You'll find out, he says cryptically. Now, there is news that we ought to be paying attention to. And then obviously our attention has been distracted all week, and the mass shooting, the largest in American history, took a lot of our focus this week on the air. But there's a report out today that the Russian news agency Sputnik is quoting a Russian lawmaker who had just returned from North Korea, who says Kim Jong-un is ready to test a missile that's capable of reaching the continental United States, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle. Already been reports that they're going to build missiles that could reach New York and Boston. So they're preparing a new test for a long-range missile. They even gave us the mathematical calculations that they believe prove that their missile can hit the western coast of the U.S., said a member of the Russian State Duma Committee on International Affairs. And the lawmaker added that the general mood in Pyongyang is rather belligerent. So is it that? Is it that the president is just keeping everybody on their toes? The president's a great negotiator. I don't think I'd want to mess with the U.S. military. President, thankfully, too, appears to be setting the stage to fulfill another campaign promise, withdrawing America from this disastrous Iranian deal. And the president has accused Iran of not living up to the spirit of the nuclear deal amid reports that of plans to withdraw the certification of the agreement. And he just said again yesterday that the Iranian regime supports terrorism. They export violence, bloodshed, and chaos across the Middle East and the world. As he was meeting, and they said that's why we must put an end to Iran's continued aggression and their continued nuclear ambitions. They've not lived up to the spirit of the agreement. And he told reporters, you'll be hearing about Iran very shortly. We must not allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons. If they do, then we know what's going to happen, exactly what we have here. Nancy Pelosi speaking today, I believe is the same group that the president spoke to. Anyway, is, she was on CNN last night, I guess, thanking illegal alien parents for breaking U.S. immigration laws and sneaking their children across the border. She actually thanked them. Anyway, it was at some town hall that CNN was running, and she took a question from a member of the audience who said that he and his sister are beneficiaries of Obama's DACA policy, and they're terrified of being deported. And Pelosi said, dreamers are beautiful, and we frankly owe a debt of gratitude to your parents for bringing you here to be such a brilliant part of our future. Well, thank you for breaking our laws, coming from a lawmaker. It's going to be interesting this Sunday to watch what the NFL does. Ticket prices now are down 20 to 40% compared to 2016, according to the Washington Times and an analysis by CNBC that ticket prices during the first three games of 2017 enjoyed a 20 to 40% increase over last year, but skidded and actually dropped in week two. So they're down 20 to 40% since all of this had all happened. The Democrats now find themselves in a bit of a dilemma. You've got this scandal, the New York Times investigation into Hollywood produced. By the way, I could care less about Harvey Weinstein. I could care less. Major donor to the DNC, big Democratic liberal funder, and uncovered allegations of sexual harassment, unwanted physical contact, stretching over 30 years. And anyway, huge donor. Now the Democrats are wondering what they should do. They took the money. You got Senators Booker, Gillibrand, Schumer, Harris, Franken among the Democrats who got money. Senators Stabenow and Casey, up for re-election coming in 2018, took over $2,000 from him. Two prominent Democratic governors, Andrew Cuomo, Terry McAuliffe, accepted tens of thousands of dollars. Senator Warren, Leahy, Blumenthal, they're now announcing very quickly they're donating the contributions as quickly as they can to charity. There's an interesting Newsbusters piece today. The headline, Not Speaking Truth to Power, Brave Late-Night Host Skipped the Weinstein sex scandal. It's a good point, because if it was a Republican or a conservative, you know pretty darn well that Stephen Colbert and some others, why? Because he's powerful and might want to hire them one day? The visitor logs show that Weinstein visited the Obama White House, 13 times, over 13 times. So that's pretty interesting. The lawyer defending Harvey Weinstein is, by the way, the same lawyer. Well, let me get this right. Is in the sexual harassment claim is the same attorney that tried to derail President Trump's presidential campaign. Remember that? You got Weinstein raised nearly $700,000 for Obama before hiring his daughter. Democrats, some of them are now saying, we're going to return Harvey the harasser's campaign cash. You never know in these cases. It's just the hypocrisy of it all that stinks to high heaven. If it's a conservative, there's one treatment. Liberal, another treatment. All right, we've got a lot to get to today, including a passionate debate on the issue of Second Amendment rights and what the media is not going to tell you. Meet this hero. Thomas Gunderson is on the program today. John Lott and Tim Schmidt when we get back. And then we have Jay Sekulow, Sarah Carter, and John Solomon all coming up. We're just watching a story. I got reporters on it to confirm it, but just telling you, keeping in the loop of what we're investigating. Gateway Pundit reporting the gunman Stephen Paddock may have traveled to Middle Eastern countries like Jordan and the United Arab Emirates on cruises. Doesn't mean a thing. The only thing is ISIS continues to triple down on being responsible for the shooting and saying that he had converted. No evidence whatsoever. I'm just kind of keeping you in the loop of what we're watching, and just one of many theories that we're following. We want to get to the truth, as always. We'll let you know.
The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, a number of other lawmakers who won't do anything about this because the NRA has their balls in a money clip, also sent their thoughts and their prayers today, which is good. They should be praying. They should be praying for God to forgive them for letting the gun lobby run this country.
Why don't we act? What is the problem? What was it about first graders losing their lives that wasn't sad enough to result in changes?
The NRA has just incredible grip on the Republican Party, and our job is going to be to turn NRA into not relevant anymore in American politics.
Do you feel like they're complicit, the GOP, the NRA, in the gun epidemic we're seeing in America?
Of course they are. Of course they are.
We have a moral responsibility to do something. Otherwise, we are failing. We are failing the people of this country whose lives are at stake.
Why do we have a group of laws? A guy can have 20 weapons, 25 weapons like this, and literally kill just go hunting for human beings like he did a couple of nights ago.
Reinstate the assault weapons ban or come up with a better answer.
Thoughts and prayers are good, but they're simply not enough. Thoughts and prayers are not enough when more moms and dads will bury their children this week, and thoughts and prayers are not enough when sons and daughters will be forced to grow up without their parents. Attacks like we have seen today have happened all too often in America.
This is going to reopen the debate over guns in this country.
Well, it is, but I think it's really important to make sure we do it accurately.
I think this is time for a national dialogue that we can have in a calm and reasoned way in which the country can figure out how come we have so many mass shootings in this country. We can't have that conversation because it immediately becomes so emotional between the gun owners of America who are protected by the NRA and other people who are saying there ought to be a more reasonable middle ground.
What Congress must do is pass laws that keep our citizens safe. And that starts with laws that help prevent guns, especially the most dangerous guns, from falling into the wrong hands.
We saw this evil in Newtown just a few years ago. Nothing has changed since Newtown. Congress has been complicit. We also ought to be angry. In fact, I'm furious that Congress has been complicit. Now is the time for action.
Do you want to make America great again? Do something the last two presidents haven't been able to do. Pass any kind of common sense gun control legislation.
Yeah, one thing the American public always knows is the elites always protect themselves, and they always protect themselves with guns. And then they lecture the American public how you shouldn't do that. But in the heart of the American public all over this country, they see these monsters, and they don't want to be alone out there. They want to be able to protect themselves. One of the things that happened in Las Vegas, when they said shelter in place, the first thing that came up when they were sheltered, they said, does somebody have a gun? We saw it with the hurricanes this past week in Texas and Florida and places like that, Louisiana. People are, when the water's rising, when it goes dark, the American public values this freedom to protect themselves. And now you have Dianne Feinstein and Schumer and the media to get this horrible tragedy, and they want to piggyback their whole agenda to ban guns, restrict law-abiding people for the last 20 years, this circus on the back of this tragedy and enacted. And what the NRA is fighting for is reciprocity, enforce the existing federal gun laws, protect the Americans' right to protect themselves.
All right, hour two, Sean Hannity show. That last voice you heard was that of Wayne LaPierre, who was on Hannity last night on the Fox News Channel. As if you listen very closely to all of those people that are suggesting, well, let's shred the Constitution, let's get rid of the Second Amendment. Even the New York Times so-called conservative, the one conservative writer that they have, he wants to abolish the Second Amendment. It happens predictably after any incident where a weapon is used in a shooting or a killing. When it comes to facts and figures and numbers, those are all ignored. Data is ignored completely because we have brought this information, this data, to you as a show, both on radio and TV, for years, and they don't want to engage in what the real data says. Now, but if you listen closely, you got the late night comedians, and I'm sure there's not one voice that you heard there that doesn't make millions and millions of dollars a year. I doubt there is one studio in which they tape before a live audience where there are not security guards in the studio. And I think I'd bet a pretty healthy amount of money with pretty good odds that there's at least one of them that is armed in that studio in case, God forbid, somebody in the audience dares to run after the precious prima donna comedian host on any given night. And they certainly, would want to be protected. Then you've got the politicians and the celebrities. Same thing with them. They live in their gated communities that have security guards. They have the best security systems, the most expensive security systems, isolated from the rest of the world as much as they can possibly be. We showed on Hannity last night video of the Emmys and Oscars, and when you look, you see, security galore. And the taxpayers even fund some of that security because it's the LAPD. In the case of it's a Los Angeles red carpet event, they're there also. So you have plenty of armed security for the guards, and I'm sure that they would demand it if it wasn't there. That's not the question here. Question is, what about the average American citizen? There is evil in this world. There are people that rape. There are people that rob. There are people that steal. There are people that seemingly want to hurt innocent people for no reason whatsoever. Then you have people with ideologies that they want to fulfill. And do those Americans constitutionally have the right to be able to defend themselves, their families, their children, their wives? It's not the same universe that these people lecturing us live in for most people. Most people don't live in a huge security-ridden gated community. Most people don't have, $1 million security systems. Most people don't have guards with them or people that are trained to defend in situations should they arise. Most people don't have armed guards. The only defense they have is themselves if somebody, God forbid, breaks into their house. So what do they get to do? Do they have the right to defend themselves? And do more guns equal less crime? Well, we've proven that over and over again this week, but we're here to talk more about it. And joining us, John Lott is the president of the Crime Prevention Center. He's also the author of, now in, I think it's 50th edition for crying out loud, because he keeps updating it with facts, data, and information. More Guns, Less Crime. Tim Schmidt is with us. He's the president of the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, of which they are a proud sponsor of this program. And yeah, I believe in the products that I sponsor on this program. And one of the things that I know the USCCA is deeply involved in is something called gun safety and how to be a safe gun owner, just like the NRA is involved in the safety and training of the use of firearms. When people call me on this program, I think I'm going to get myself one of those big AK-47 things that I've heard about. And I'm like, what do you think, Hannity? What's the gun that I ought to get? My answer is, well, you got to get trained in the use of whatever firearm you feel most comfortable using. But you've got to get the training. And I was trained in gun safety at 11. And I still do refreshing courses. I took a course in Florida in the last year on gun safety, just to update, just to remember. And that's the type of thing that the USCCA is involved in. If, God forbid, you have to protect yourself. Anyway, welcome back to the program. John, you hear all these people. What's your reaction?
Well, thanks for having me on, Sean. There's so many false statements, I'm not even sure where to start. I heard Tom Brokaw saying, how come we have so many mass shootings in this country compared to the rest of the world? And that's simply false. I mean, even if you compare us to Europe, whether you look at during the Obama administration or you go back all the way since 1970, the casualty rates for mass public shootings are much higher in Europe than they are in the United States. Over the 8 years of the Obama administration, the casualty rate per capita, you have to put it on a per capita base for the European Union, was 50% higher than the rate in the United States. People forget. You had 130 people killed and hundreds wounded at the concert shooting in Paris in 2015. You had 3 other major attacks there. You had Norway. You had attacks in Germany and Italy, all across the continent there in the European Union. But I want to do something. Every time you have these types of attacks, you have to realize the types of proposals that they're putting forward have nothing to do with these attacks. I wish one reporter would say, okay, you want these background checks on private transfers. Would it have stopped the attack in Las Vegas? Can you name one attack during the Obama administration that would have stopped? Because President Obama went out there time after time. Every single talk that he gave on mass public shootings, he pushed background checks on private transfers as a solution. And yet nobody asked him, can you name one of these attacks that you've talked about where it would have mattered? It wouldn't have mattered for years before that. I think, and we can talk about it, I think they have another reason why they push this particular law and try to shoehorn it into something that it's never related to. But there is something we can do. In over 98% of these mass public shootings since 1950, the common factor is that these killers go after people in areas where general citizens aren't allowed to defend themselves. These guys may be crazy in some sense, but they're not stupid. They know, and you can see it in their diaries, you can see it in other statements that they made. They know that they're going to be able to go and kill and maim more people if somebody's not there quickly with a gun to stop them.
Now, Tim Schmidt is the president of the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. You hear me doing their ads proudly, and I just love the fact, Tim, that, you're offering people solid information. We're offering right now 164 pages. You can get it. You can download it right now if you go to defendfamily.com. And one of the things you're talking about is, what if, God forbid, you find yourself in this situation? How do you think? And situational awareness is what you teach. Also, gun safety is a big part of what the USCCA is all about.
That's right, Sean, and thanks for having me on. It's great to talk to you again. And you're right, the USCCA, we're all about education, training, and really helping and empowering average U.S. citizens to be that responsible gun owner and that first line of defense for their family. And I got to tell you, what really put the bee in my bonnet with that whole montage that you played was what these media and Hollywood elites. They sit there and they shake their fingers at us, and they look at us as flyover states as these common people that don't need guns, when in fact they're all guarded by armed guards. And the fact of the matter is that, and this is a U.S. Department of Justice study, typical everyday Americans, responsibly armed Americans, use guns 1.5 million times or more every single year to stop crimes like rapes, crimes like murders, assaults. So don't tell me that guns only do bad things. It's actually quite the opposite.
You know, I want to remind people, too, because right, as we continue, Sean Hannity Show, 800-941-SEAN. Tim Schmidt is the president of the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. I'm so proud to be associated with them and their organization and how you can defend your family and stay safe and be a responsible gun owner. John Lott is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. And this information that people have, I get a little upset when there are irresponsible gun owners and those people that ask me, Hannity, what kind of big gun do you carry? It's not a matter of a big gun. It's a matter of what gun are you going to get trained in. How important, Tim, from your perspective? I think it's the most important thing. Get trained, talk to experts, former military, police, the guys that teach you. They love what they do. And you don't have to go in and feel guilty that you don't know something. Just say, all right, I've not had this experience. I want to learn from people that understand it so I can be a responsible gun owner.
Yeah, Sean, you hit the nail on the head. Training is by far the most important thing. And one of the things I like to say all the time is that training is like eating and bathing. It's best when done on a regular basis. So training isn't something you just do once. It's something that you do over and over so that you train in your muscle memory and you're reacting instead of thinking. Because when the thing hits the fan, you're gonna default to your lowest level of training. And so the fact that you're bringing this up is so valuable and so important.
Well, I was recently in Florida, John, and I went to a gun shop down there, and so I said I just want to take a basic, simple reminder safety course. And the guy just said, all right, here he wanted to see how well I would shoot. I grouped it perfectly, bullseyes, every one of them. And the guy literally said, he watched me how I handled the firearm. And he goes, you sure you want the beginner safety course? I said, yeah, I just want to go over everything. I want a refresher course. And the guy was far more knowledgeable in firearms than I was. And we went over all these different weapons, even those that I don't have. And I left having learned a lot.
Sure. Look, one thing you see when you look at concealed carry permit holders is how incredibly law-abiding these individuals are. That even when training isn't required, when you see states that, like Idaho or others that have moved to so-called constitutional carry where a permit's not required and training isn't mandated, you actually see big increases in the number of people enrolling in classes in order to get training on their own. But just to give you an idea how law-abiding these individuals are, they lose their permits for any type of firearms-related violation at thousands or tens of thousands of a percentage point. Police are rarely convicted of misdemeanors or felonies. But permit holders are convicted at about 1/7 the rate that police officers are. And, I would argue it's pretty hard to find almost any other group.
For the safety and benefit of people, John, where can people find your research online? They can get your book, More Guns, Less Crime, but you have a website that talks about all these statistics. Where is that?
It's at crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org. And my latest book that kind of goes through a lot of the latest debate is called The War on Guns.
All right. And by the way, you can go to defendfamily.com for Tim Schmidt's 164-page guide that gives you so much information and knowledge that helps you be a better gun owner, which I urge everybody to be if they're going to, and understanding the safety. All right, guys, thank you both for being with us. 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number if you want to be a part of the program. When we come back, we'll have a debate on this very topic coming up. But first, we'll shift gears. Jay Sekulow, John Solomon, and Sarah Carter join us, and we'll update you on the latest of what's going on in the investigations into masking, surveillance, leaking, and much more. Straight ahead.
Based on the work done so far, what's your assessment of what the Russians did do in 2016, what they're doing now, and what potential?
I would just say I think there is large consensus that they hacked into political files, released those files in an effort to influence the election. We think they actively tried to at least test the vulnerabilities of 21 states' electoral systems. And we feel that they used the social media firms both in terms of paid advertising and what I believe is more problematic, but created false accounts and others that would drive interest towards stories or groups. And generally those stories or groups were to sow chaos and drive division in our country. And I think that the pattern that they used in America, they have used in other nations around the world. And I fear sometimes if you add up all they've spent, that was a decent rate of return for them, unfortunately.
Let me add to it if I can. We can certifiably say that no vote totals were affected, that the tallies are accurate, the outcome of the election, based upon the count of votes, they did not in any way, shape, or form that we've been able to find alter that. If we used solely the social media advertising that we have seen, there's no way that you can look at that and say that that was to help the right side of the ideological chart and not the left, or vice versa. They were indiscriminate. One of the things that's most challenging to this investigation is, with the exception of certain pieces that have already been discussed, it seems that the overall theme of the Russian involvement in the U.S. elections was to create chaos at every level. And I would tell you the fact that we're sitting here 9 months later investigating it, they have been pretty darn successful. All I can tell you is that the votes were counted, one person won, and that's how it's going to stay.
All right, this is the Sean Hannity Show. One of the main intelligence officials that testified before Congress said, yeah, they've tried to influence this election. Yeah, they tried to influence past elections. Yeah, they'll try to influence future elections. And by the way, if you want the real culpability or blame, I would argue that this was known and the Obama administration actually did nothing about it. Now the question is, okay, where did this dossier on Donald Trump come from with this former MI6 guy Steele that actually had false information in it that said, oh, Donald Trump was at the Ritz in Moscow and he had two hookers that were urinating on his bed, which turned out to be false. The guy that James Comey wanted to pay, or perhaps even paid, some $50,000 to. We haven't gotten a definitive answer on any of that. Now, what we heard is no votes were changed, no tallies were different, nothing happened, and apparently it was on both sides that they were just trying to sow chaos, not particularly pick one candidate over another. Here to sort all of this out, Sarah Carter of Circa.com, Jay Sekulow, the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice and counsel to the president, John Solomon of the Hill are here with us. Jay, let me start with you. I want to know who paid for this dossier. It originally started, I guess, with a Republican, but it was picked up by Democrats. And and is there any influence that you see here in terms of Russians trying to impact our elections like they've done in the past?
Well, with relate to the dossier, which has been, complete, it's a complete fabrication. So this was the Steele dossier. It looks like it was started by, initially the research was done by Fusion GPS in concert possibly with others. As you mentioned, it may have actually been put together initially by some Republicans, but ultimately was picked up by the Democrats. But the most important aspect of this was it ultimately picked up by the FBI. In other words, did the Federal Bureau of Investigation actually pay money to Steele to produce this document? This, after all, is a document purportedly that was utilized by James Comey to, when he met with the President of the United States, to let him know this was out there, which I've said before is a Hoover kind of tactic. In other words, almost an extortion or an attempted extortion by holding this, document that I want you to know, Mr. President-elect or Mr. President at that point, we have this information. That has not come out yet as to who was the actual funder, where the money actually came from. But there's certainly ongoing Senate investigations on that. We've got Freedom of Information Act requests out on it. And I think it points to the more serious problem, and that was what you heard today from both the ranking member and the chairman of the Intel Committee some 9 months after these investigations, or roughly 9 months after these investigations have really gotten underway. So what do we know? We know that the Russians were trying to sow chaos into the elections, according to the committees. We also know that they've been trying to do that for decades. We know that not one vote was changed, not one vote tally was changed, not one machine of voting calibration was breached in this, and that even the ads that were purportedly run on the social media sites and the social media platforms, as the chairman said, they didn't skew right or left. They were just skewing, chaos. So you've got a situation where they certainly had no evidence, and they've not produced any evidence of any kind of collusion at this point. So I think this tells you what we've got is a lot of expense, a lot of time commitment going on.
I think this runs deeper, though, because Fusion GPS recklessly distributed the dossier to media outlets.
Absolutely.
And Fusion was working at the time for a political ally of Hillary Clinton's. And we could take it a step further, Sarah Carter, from your reporting and some of the things that we've learned in the past. We know that this guy, Christopher Steele, was paying Russians to come up with the information that turned out to be false. And then I want to know, why did the FBI director at the time, James Comey, want to buy false information that was being disseminated by the Democrats and hire this guy?
I think that's the biggest question, Sean. I mean, why was he willing to do that, or did he do that? But I think if you go back and we just look at Fusion GPS and how they worked with the Russians to lobby on behalf of the Kremlin. So here we have a company that is basically putting together a dossier that has all of these salacious arguments against President Trump, saying all of these horrific things about President Trump, spreading these lies out there. And at the same time, they were working with the Russians to lobby against the Magnitsky Act on behalf of the Kremlin. And I mean, Fusion GPS was working with a suspected Soviet agent by the name of Renat Akhtinishin, and they were working on this together. So these are the questions that the Senate Judiciary Committee had. What was the relationship between Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS? How did Fusion GPS then become involved in this, in this investigation into President Trump, and who initially paid for that? But one thing we see is clear, is that the connections to the Russians are not on the part of President Trump and his administration, but the connection to Russia lie very clearly in Fusion GPS and other people who put this dossier together against Trump.
So the connection, if Fusion GPS is connected to Hillary, and you've got Christopher Steele, the former MI6 agent, is now getting a lot of this, what turned out to be false information from Russians, and that information is being disseminated. And the FBI director seemingly wants to continue, even though the information is false with this. Can an argument be made, John Solomon, that there was collusion, if you will, or maybe that's too strong a word, or some type of symbiotic relationship between Christopher Steele, the Russians, and the Clinton campaign to hurt Donald Trump?
Well, I think there's even a bigger question. Let's go back to one of the original stories that Sarah and I wrote last March and April, where we raised the question. There were some people in the intelligence community saying they were concerned that the conclusion that Russia was trying to help Donald Trump was discredited by some of the evidence in their hand. And one of the pieces of evidence is the dossier. Let's assume the dossier has false information from it. Let's assume, as Ben Republic, it came from Russians. If the Russians were trying to help Donald Trump get elected, why would they help a British guy fill a dossier full of negative information about Trump? It literally undercuts one of the primary conclusions that the intelligence assessment made, that they were clearly trying to help Donald Trump. And a lot of the intelligence professionals I've talked to have told me that this dossier cuts against that concept that the Russians were just trying to help elect Donald Trump. What did you hear the chairman say? We're not yet sold on the idea that the Russians were expressing a preference. They may have just been sowing chaos. That's a big shift and change in the discussion we've been having for the last year.
Yeah, let me play this cut. Richard Burr talking about the Steele dossier cannot be trusted because he won't speak to us. Listen to what he said.
As it relates to the Steele dossier, unfortunately, the committee has hit a wall. We have on several occasions made attempts to contact Mr. Steele, to meet with Mr. Steele, to include personally the vice chairman and myself as two individuals making that connection. Those offers have gone unaccepted. The committee cannot really decide the credibility of the dossier without understanding things like who paid for it, who are your sources and subsources. We're investigating a very expansive Russian network of interference in U.S. elections. And though we have been incredibly enlightened at our ability to rebuild backwards the Steele dossier up to a certain date. Getting past that point has been somewhat impossible. And I say this because I don't think we're going to find any intelligence products that unlock that key to pre-June of 16. My hope is that Mr. Steele will make a decision to meet with either Mark and I or the committee or both so that we can hear his side of it versus for us to depict in our findings what his intent or what his actions were.
He's talking about that Senator Burr interference, not collusion. Jay, let me go to you on that. To me, it just sounds like the opposite may end up being true. Have you seen any evidence of any Trump member, campaign member, that colluded with the Russians this past campaign?
No, and more importantly, neither has the Senate or the House committees. There's been no evidence. They've come forward they've not come forward with any evidence of collusion. And in fact, the witnesses that have testified have established the exact opposite. At least the ones we know that have testified, and information has been released publicly. I'm not going to speculate as to what people haven't seen, obviously, because who knows. But I will tell you this: there's been no evidence submitted on Russia collusion because there was none.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back. More with Jay Sekulow, more with John Solomon, more with Sarah Carter. Hey. All right, as we continue with Sarah Carter and Jay Sekulow and John Solomon are with us. So if you have, Sarah, if you got Fusion GPS literally locked at the hip with Christopher Steele and the Hillary Clinton campaign, they're disseminating false information on Donald Trump and the FBI director wanting to involve themselves in it, then I think you can add another piece of the puzzle, which would be the Uranium One deal sign-off and then the kickback of $145 million to the Clinton Foundation. It would seem if anyone was closer, any campaign was closer to the Russians or close to the Russians, it would have been the Clinton campaign.
Well, it would appear by the evidence that's out there, by the information that we have had access to, by what we've seen, that is certainly a concern. And I know some people want to call for a special counsel on that and want an investigation. But even more importantly, Sean, I think when we think about the dossier itself, if the FBI used that dossier to launch the investigation into Trump, they should know who paid for that dossier. I'm sure they investigated that. Don't you think it's time for the FBI to at least get that information to the Senate? If they don't want to release that publicly and they say it's classified, well, they have a Senate Intelligence Committee that they can share that with.
Here's then my big $50 million question is this. Congressman Rohrabacher met with Julian Assange, John Solomon, and Assange is the one guy we know would know where the emails, the DNC Podesta emails all came from because they were given to him. And he's the one that made them public. So he knows where they came from. Now, from what we can tell, Robert Mueller and everybody, nobody's picked up the phone to call Julian Assange. Why not?
That's a great question. And I think next week there'll be some new information that comes to light about how thin the conclusion is inside the intelligence community about how they make the connection to Russia in the WikiLeaks documents. It is not a slam dunk, factually based or evidence-based conclusion. It's a guess. And next week I'll be able to report a little bit about that. I'll also be able to report a little bit more. There is a document that I've seen that shows the FBI does know who funded the Steele dossier, and I'm still working on reporting that. But I can tell you what I've seen, the FBI does know the identity of the person who funded the dossier, and if they know that, it should be in the hands of a Senate Intelligence Committee. That's a great question.
Is that person connected more with the Clinton campaign or the Trump campaign? Can you tell us that?
Still doing work to verify something, but I can say the person is definitely involved in politics. That's what I can say. Someone that was definitely involved in politics.
Can we say that it would change the narrative from where it is now dramatically?
No, it actually would accentuate the narrative that this was meant to be a political hit job from the beginning, but it probably started in the Republican Party. I think that the evidence is going to be overwhelming. And then it started as an effort to slow Donald Trump's march to the
and then it was picked up by the Democratic Party.
Not as clear there. There's a great question about whether this dossier was picked up by the Intelligence Committee, and it was the Intelligence Committee driving it in the fall of 2016 rather than another political operative. And that's the danger of politicized intelligence. This is going to be the story.
No, that's not politicized. That's weaponizing intelligence. All right, thank you all for being with us. Appreciate it. 800-941-SEAN on numbers, and we'll have full and complete coverage tonight. We'll also tell you the truth about guns that nobody else in the media will ever tell you. And we'll get to your call straight ahead.
Now we have to turn to renewed calls, shouts, begs for gun restrictions in the wake of the Las Vegas mass shooting.
The Second Amendment is there for a reason. You can own your gun, but does it extend to allowing an individual to own 47 guns, high-powered semi-automatic weapon guns?
The idea now that they're going to rouse themselves to action on bump stocks, that is putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. There's so much more that could be done.
If you want to buy a gun, a handgun, a long gun, if you want to buy 49 of them, feel free. But you're also going to have to buy an insurance policy, minimum of, say, 25 grand.
90% of the public, Democrats and Republicans, favor closing any and all private sale and gun show loopholes that exist.
So the court, I think, in fact, has it right. That's something of an irony here. The court has it right that the right to bear arms is extremely expansive. Now that seems to me strange and dangerous. Great Britain is the oldest free country in the world, and yet somehow conservatives have this idea that the only right that guarantees our freedom is the Second Amendment. These are the same conservatives who seem to think that if it weren't for gun ownership, we wouldn't be a free people. It's not gun ownership that keeps us free, it's the rule of law. And by the way, whenever people do use guns for political reasons, we condemn it.
They're going to say if you give them bump stock, it's going to be the slippery slope. I certainly hope so. But I don't think bump stock should be a substitute for the background check. And by the way, the background check is a compromise. There are many more things members want to do, and we're saying, how do we save the most lives? We save the most lives with the background check. So we just have to have that fight. But the American people have to weigh in, as they did to fight the monstrosities of health care bills that the Republicans were proposing.
All right, news roundup and information overload hour here on the Sean Hannity Show. And, of course, that's Nancy Pelosi, hoping the bump stock ban is the slippery slope to full and complete gun control. Then you've got Brett Stevens. By the way, he is the New York Times conservative wanting to abolish the Constitution. Just side note, he's sounding like Michael Moore. Only the New York Times would label such a person the conservative of that particular bastion. Anyway, joining us, Jeffrey Lord is former associate political director in the Reagan administration, author, columnist, and he wrote the book What America Needs, The Case for Donald Trump. Also, Leslie Marshall is with us, host of the Leslie Marshall Show and a Fox News contributor. Well, are you at least happy with the NRA on bump stocks, Leslie, or do you think the NRA is evil and the Second Amendment should be abolished?
I have never thought the Second Amendment should be abolished. I love our Constitution, and I love that you have a gun, Sean, and that you have the right to it. I have to say I almost fainted because it's certainly a cold day in hell when the NRA and I agree on something with them backing these new regulations on the rapid-fire gun bump stocks. I don't just agree with them there, but in looking at the Constitution, as you know, even like the Bible, there are different interpretations to the text. And I don't see in the Second Amendment that the government, who has the first job of Donald Trump, any president, is to keep you and I safe, to keep America safe, Americans safe. And if we are safer because somebody restricts how many guns you own, they're not taking away your ability to own a gun. But if somebody is stockpiling a lot of guns, what is the purpose of that? That person is either paranoid, Sean, or
What about people that like to collect?
And I don't want to take that chance.
Well, what about people that like to collect guns? What about people that like to own them and use them in varying situations? What if it's their sport? And as part of the sport...
Forgive my ignorance on this. I don't know if they track ammunition, but my best friend's husband collects guns.
Well, the gun is no good without any bullets.
No, wait a minute. But that's not true. If you're a collector, it's not true. Because if you're a collector, they're usually going in a case or on a wall. You don't need the ammunition.
All right, some people play golf, but I have a lot of friends that like to go hunting, and I have friends that go target shooting pretty much every weekend, and they run through a lot of rounds. So we're going to find out they're using a lot of rounds, and the FBI is going to pay a visit to their house and say, excuse me, you have 1,000 rounds that you've purchased in the last month. We want to know if you're going to go on a mass shooting. Jeffrey Lord, what's your take?
That is
I mean, you're being humorous, but that is more or less what this would come down to. And let me just broaden this for a second here, Sean. I've written a couple columns on this, once this last week after Las Vegas and once after an earlier mass shooting, when everybody says, well, we have to have the discussion. We have to have the discussion. Well, okay, let's have the discussion. How in the world in a culture, if a culture does not value life, do we get into this situation? We get into this situation, I would suggest, and perhaps we need to finally have the conversation about abortion. Now, Nancy Pelosi is concerned about preventing many deaths. How many millions of babies have lost their lives here because of a quote-unquote right to choice that was written by the Supreme Court out of thin air? If we have a culture that disrespects human life and teaches people to have disrespect for human life, how else are we going to wind up than we did with this guy in Las Vegas who had no respect for human life? And that question is something
Jeffrey,
something that liberals are never going to want to discuss. And
wait a minute, that's a good. I think Jeff makes a good point. If we're going to have the discussions, let's have them.
But Sean, what I just heard from Jeff Lord is God is love, love is blind, Ray Charles is blind, therefore Ray Charles is God. No, I don't.
Leslie, that makes zero sense. Can you explain that to us?
Roe v. Wade is not in the Constitution. It's a Supreme Court decision in 1973, and I don't think you compare a Supreme Court decision to a constitutional amendment, which the Second Amendment is. One could also argue, Jeffrey, that, and I don't want to sound disgusting, but had that man not been born, those 59 people would not have been shot. Do you understand the slippery slope we can go on with this discussion?
That is really sick thinking. Are you serious with that statement? That is twisted.
What I'm saying is based on history.
You wouldn't have been killed if you weren't born.
Abortion. How are we going from those people that are in the hospital right now in Vegas to a woman's right to choose? How are we going from the born individual
the point Jeffrey's
to
making,
the unborn?
let me sum it up for you. What he was saying and suggesting to you, if you got his point, was that every life matters, and so does the life that is growing inside the womb of a mother. That was the point he was making.
And if you teach disrespect for life, which is what I looked this up, Sean, and at least as far as I could discover, there were 8 years of mass shootings between 1929 and 1972. Roe versus Wade came in 1973, and we've had many, 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 many more than 8 years of it since. And I would suggest that perhaps we need to carefully reflect about what we're teaching kids out there and what this guy's thought of the value of human life, which obviously was not
Jeffrey,
much.
What if you had found out, because some people, as you know, are very they're religious wackos, right? And regardless of the religion, but yet they would be pro-life. I'm saying just because somebody kills people doesn't mean that if you had asked them prior to the shooting, and if in fact an individual snaps and does something like this, it doesn't mean that they wouldn't have said, "Oh, I'm against abortion," and then go down and gun down people.
All I'm saying is that if we have a culture that doesn't value human life, people pick up on it. That's what I'm suggesting.
But I don't know. But you know what? I think it's terrible to even Jeff. Look, there's no way I don't think Americans overall don't value human life, and I don't think we can all be grouped in a basket with individuals who go out and take the lives of others, as that man in Vegas did, and other massacres, terrorist attacks that we have witnessed here and throughout the world. I think for the most part, human beings are good, and we see that in times like this because there are people who, like police officers, military, mothers looking for their children, running toward gunfire.
Yes,
sure. we see the value for human life in when we have crises like this.
Sure, but I'm just suggesting the overall culture. You look at Hollywood, and let's broaden this a little further here to Harvey Weinstein. I mean, here are all these liberals lecturing everybody else on sexual harassment, et cetera, when there's someone in their midst, and you had to believe they all knew this stuff. For years, for years,
sorry.
I mean, it's their values, it's double standards, it's the whole 9 yards. It's all connected in its own strange fashion.
The sweeping generalizations are killing me, and let me tell you why. One, I'm standing 20 minutes from Hollywood here at my office in Los Angeles, in my studio. Two, although I've never met him, I've been on TV and film outside of what I do, acting, even as a talk show host in film. I've never met him. I've been a part of the industry. I have no knowledge of that. And let me tell you something. There are men that have sexually harassed me throughout my career and you probably don't know all of their names. That the idea that all people in an industry or all people in a geographic location or
never said
all
that.
people of a certain gender would just happen
we know
to
California is extremely liberal. It's not all, but many. I mean, obviously, look at the government you put in place out there.
Liberals don't agree with sexual harassment. Nobody does, Sean. I think that's an agreement that we can all make left or right. It's wrong.
Nobody suggested that. Nobody said that. Nobody would say that. Now, let's go back. The only Jeff, I'll let you make your own point. Why am I making your point?
I'm just saying that all of these things connect in their own way in terms of how we live and work as a society, and that we have to have more respect for human life and teach it openly and not be embarrassed to do it or not think that this is some religiously crazy wacko thing. If we have more respect for human life, we will get less of these massacres out there. It's not about the gun. It's about the people who pull the triggers.
When we come back, we'll continue more with Jeffrey Lord and, of course, our liberal friend, Leslie Marshall. At the bottom of this half hour, I got to meet this kid yesterday. He's the one that met the president, was shot in the leg. I'll always stand for my country, for my president. Met him, an incredible young man, Thomas Gunderson, and his mom will be with us, too. Not the best call to get if you're a parent.
I'm not going to get deep into it again tonight. I said what I had to say last night, but I do want to say something to these nuts who spent most of the day today on television and online attacking those of us who think we need to do something about the fact that 59 innocent people were killed. They say it's inappropriate to be talking about it because it's too soon. Well, maybe it's too soon for you because deep down inside, you know, in your heart, you know you bear some responsibility for the fact that almost anyone can get any weapon they want. Now you want to cover yourself until the storm of outrage passes. You can go back to your dirty business as usual. But it's not too soon for us because we're Americans. And last time I checked, the First Amendment is at least as important as the Second Amendment. So we really
There's Jimmy Kimmel again. Oh, you must bear some responsibility for the shootings. Jimmy, no, that's not true. And I'd like an answer, Jimmy. How many guys do you have in your studio on any given night, and how many of them may be armed? Just curious, with all the crowds that might throw themselves on you during the course of the taping of your show. Anyway, we continue with Leslie Marshall and Jeffrey Lord. And it always comes down to this question. God forbid, Leslie, somebody breaks into your house. God forbid anybody's house. And that person wants to rob, rape, steal, and maybe kill. What do you do?
Well, Sean, I'm very much against guns, and there are statistics that show that
I don't want the statistics. Stop. I'm not interested in your argument. What are you going to do? God forbid it happens tonight. How would you defend yourself and your family?
I've made it very difficult. One, because of what we do for a living.
What do you do if somebody breaks into your house and is there to rape, rob, and steal?
You're missing the point. If somebody has alarm
you're a rich talk show host. I get it. You can afford a security system, but you're not answering the question, because for the average person, they might have a security system, but they don't live on acres and acres of land, and this happens every day, and I just want to know, for their sake, what does somebody do if somebody breaks into your house and wants to rape, rob, and steal? What do you do?
I told you before that we do have a place, a hidden place in our house to be safe. It's not like a safe room in the movies by any means, and we wouldn't have the money to do
you
that.
Have a safe room. What about the people that can't afford a safe room? What do they do?
Well, no, it's not I can't afford. This wasn't an expensive thing. That it was just.
Right, so you're saying everybody should get a safe room? That's
no,
your
we bought
answer?
A house that happened to have a hidden place somewhere in my home. That is,
Okay.
That
Now let's say the hidden place is down in someone's basement, and you're upstairs when the people break into the house. What do you do then?
Well, you always have an escape route, don't you?
So what are you going to do? Jump out the window?
Well, if I have to, I mean, I'm going to fight for my life, but I'm not going to buy.
I'll tell you what Sean Hannity's going to do.
Look, Sean, you can prevent. You can say, I will smoke, and if I get cancer, deal with it then, or you can say, I won't smoke. I'm doing preventative measures so the person can't break in. I get you.
But the bottom line is
if they break in, what Sean wants me to say is I'm screwed and I get my brains blown out, but I'm not going to say that. I'm going to fight for my life, and there are other weapons I can use, like knives
But
bats
you know what?
in
The
my
world
fingers.
is not just about you, Leslie, or just about me, or just about Jeff.
But you asked
it's
me.
about the
you
common
said, what
men.
would they do if they break into my house?
My point is, the average man and woman should have the right to defend themselves.
I never said they don't have the right to defend
hang on,
themselves, but I
Jeff.
don't think you need an arsenal of weapons to keep the guy out of your house.
You have put your finger on this exactly with that Jimmy Kimmel. All three of us have spent time in the media, and when I say in the media, I mean going into physical buildings where the television cameras are, where the bureaus are, etc. You don't get past people in that thing without these people having armed guards right there in the lobby. And furthermore, you have to produce ID, which gets us over into voter ID and all this kind of thing. Every time you show up at these places, we've been to the Democratic and Republican conventions this summer. They were armed guards everywhere. These actors, these rich celebrities who live behind these gated communities, and when they go to work, they're protected by armed guards, are looking everybody else in the eye and say, well, for me, but not for thee. That's one of the problems here, and you put your finger on it exactly.
All right, I'm going to have to leave it there. Leslie, thank you. Jeff Lord, thank you. 800-941-SEAN. When we come back, you're going to meet Thomas Gunderson. His video went viral when he met President Trump, shot in the leg. He says, I will stand for my president. We'll play, we'll introduce you to him and much more as we continue. Hannity tonight, 9 Eastern on the Fox News Channel as we continue. All right, 25 now till the top of the hour. Toll-free telephone number is 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. You know, under the worst circumstances, you get to see some of the best in people. I got to meet incredible people this week. I got to meet those policemen involved in taking this guy out, this shooter out. I got to meet the surgeons that saved hundreds of lives. I got to meet the heroes that literally were helping, their fellow man in a time of trouble. This young girl that had cancer and didn't have the ability and the strength to just run as she needed to run to get away from the shooting. No problem, because there are, policemen there, and there are people just with great hearts and courage that picked her up and took her to safety. Incredible. Just amazing moments that came out of this as we were leaving the day before. Kaya Jones came by, and of course she didn't have a shirt big enough for me. Vegas Strong, which I know has gone viral on Twitter and some other places, and I know that members of my staff were really proud to have that T-shirt. Ethan, who works for us, he's the low man on the totem pole here. He's only been here a couple of years, and we rub it in every single day. Ethan did an amazing job today, and he put together a montage of some of these heroic stories that I want you to hear. And when you hear this, I want you to think of it through the prism of, Sunday's coming up and the NFL's coming up. I wonder how many guys are going to kneel this weekend, because there's such goodness and greatness in this country. And the freedom which they have, they can take a knee if they want. Okay, that freedom exists, but there are a lot of people that fought, bled, and died fighting for the flag and of course, what this country represents. We saw heroism on display when the shooting went down in Las Vegas. Then we're going to come out with that moment an hour before the shooting actually took place. Big and Rich were on stage, and they got the whole crowd, nearly 30,000 people, to put up their phones and their lights, and together, not as Republicans or Democrats, together, not as liberals or conservatives, but together, they sang God Bless America. Not like the Church of G.D. America. I don't want you to mistake it to, the Church of Jeremiah Wright. But anyway, I want you to listen to this, and I want you to think just how great this country is and how great its people are.
I went back because I'm a nurse, and I just felt that I had to. So I went to 3 different scenes. There were so many people, just normal citizens, doctors, cops, paramedics, like nurses, just off duty. Everyone's just communicating and working together. It was completely horrible, but it was absolutely amazing to see all the people come together.
Most people started scattering and they climbed the fence, but I had to stay with my buddies there. So we got him over the fence once the fires stopped and slid him under his stage so we were safe.
I mean, I owe that man my life because from the moment I got hit, he was the first one to actually help me stop the bleeding. He never left my side at all. And I remember helping me get in the back of a pickup truck. A red pickup truck with another young lady that had a gunshot wound. And kept telling him, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And he kept saying, you're not going to die. I got you. Look at me. You're not going to die. He even said it as they took me out and put me onto the concrete in front of a patrol car, that I wasn't going to die. We even talked about the moment where he actually put his finger inside the wound just to stop it. It's stuff like that I won't forget. I owe him my life.
I saw a field with a bunch of white trucks. I tested my luck to see if any of them had keys in it, and the first one that we tried opening had the key sitting right there, and started looking through people to take to the hospital. There was just too many, and it was overwhelming how much blood was everywhere. Once we dropped them off, we were like, well, let's go back for round 2 and go get some more. I transported probably 20 to 30 people injured to the hospital.
People were hitting the floor, people were running. Myself and a few of my other partners, we were trying to help people keep low instead of standing up while the firing was going on. One gentleman, unfortunately, happened to get shot, and 2 of the patients that he was with helped carry him to EMT and EMS. He was out, and myself and a few other security guards, some other civilians, we all gave hands helping transport bodies. There was a lot of people that were shot, unfortunately.
Amy McCaslin and Crystal Goddard were shielded from bullets from a man they had never met. He was shot as he held them, bleeding on a McCaslin's shirt.
We were getting away, and we came across him. He was in the bed of a pickup truck. There's a belt, a makeshift tourniquet. It was kind of around his knee. It was completely wrong spot, and I walked up there, and he was actively bleeding. So I adjusted the belt, got it up where it should be, tightened it down. We stopped the bleeding. I think we hung out there for 10, 15 minutes, and some savior in a pickup truck came and said, "Do we need a ride?" I said, "Yeah." We threw them all in the bed of the truck, and we took off to the hospital.
There's a gurney, and the tables that were inside is where his gurney is as well. They were using everything we can. We're using the rails between the portions in between. We were carrying bodies out with that as well. So I was just trying to get bodies inside to pull them outside so we can do some kind of triage.
So we saw 200 patients at Sunrise Hospital. Most of them came in probably within the first hour and a half. I mean, the job that our staff did, physicians, nurses, volunteers, ancillary staff, was just absolutely amazing. The response that we got, we had 100 physicians show up that night after they were called. We had 100 nurses.
People were telling me, just leave, they'll come back for the survivors. And I was like,
This shooting took place. We still need a lot of answers. We'll have an update on everything tonight on Hannity, turn on the Fox News Channel. The first responders, neighbor helping neighbor, the police, the firemen, the doctors that I met yesterday, the nurses I met yesterday. Incredible. I also met an incredible young man that was one of the injured. The video of him meeting President Trump has gone viral. And he's just an incredible young kid. His name is Thomas Gunderson, and he stood for the president and first lady. And then he wrote on Facebook, "I will never lie down when the president of this great country comes to shake my hand. There may be plenty of issues in this country, but I will always respect my country, my president, my flag. Shot in the leg or not, I will stand to show my president the respect he deserves." Thomas Gunderson joins us now. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Sean?
I really enjoyed meeting you. I got to tell you, so we did the interview yesterday. We run it last night on TV. I can't even begin to tell you what the reaction has been in terms of my audience. It really has impacted people very, very deeply. And I'm just curious on your end, what was the reaction you got?
Oh, honestly, it's been pretty amazing. It really has been a whole lot of love, and everybody messaging me and saying they saw it and just respecting me for the message that I am trying to get out there, and that makes me feel good because I am trying to spread a good message.
Yeah, juxtapose what I just read that you put on Facebook with, say, the NFL. I mean, doesn't it make you wonder? I mean, no, we're not a perfect country. We're not a perfect people. All of us has sinned and fallen short. I don't know if you're religious or not. And I'm just thinking, wow, there's so much good that we saw. When I was at the hospital with you, I met the girl that was shot next door to you. What a wonder. She's from she's from New Jersey. I think she goes to Pepperdine. Great kid. And all these other people. Yeah. Then I met all the nurses and doctors. And by the way, it's kind of weird them wanting my picture because I'm I want your picture because you're the ones that save lives every day. Everybody I met they all, and I kept saying to them, you must be so proud of what you've been able to do here. Tell us your experience. What was happening that night? You're at the concert an hour before Big and Rich are singing God Bless America. Then this thing goes down. Tell us what happened.
I just wanted to say that montage you guys put together just proves what I was telling you, Sean. There's so many amazing stories that I keep hearing over and over again, and I'm trying to spread those. That experience, while being horrific, you can just see the good in man that is coming out of this. My experience in there was just seeing so many people come together to help the fellow man. No matter who you were or who you looked like, what you looked like, nothing. It didn't matter. You didn't see that in that moment. You're just trying to help. And it honestly, speaking to the NFL stuff, I get it. I that's why I said there are issues in this country, and they have that right. For me, it doesn't quite make sense to protest in that way. And I think there are better ways to go about it, and I think that is my goal right now. I didn't ask for this stage. I feel like I was given this opportunity right now, and I feel like we can all hear each other through positivity without bashing each other and yelling at each other. We can take good out of what just happened.
It is surprising. Look, I make my living doing political information, news, and debate, and it's very predictable, I've got to tell you, because I've been doing this now. Believe it or not, I start my 23rd year on the Fox News Channel today. And so I'm not surprised when politics rears its ugly head, but the speed of which it happened in this case, what was your reaction to that?
I don't have a reaction to it right now, Sean, honestly. I trust me, I don't like it. I don't like hearing it, but I feel that we can't give in to that. I feel that we turn a blind eye to that, and we keep spreading this message and keep showing love and let them do that part of it. But to me, that only makes them look worse. Anybody posting those things and saying those things, that makes them look bad. And so if we respond in a negative way, if we respond in anger or hate, then we're just doing the same thing. So we need to continue to just spread love and come together through this tragedy, which I totally believe we can do. And so far, it's happened. I may be getting some negative comments and some backlash, but I can tell you that 80-90% of it is just pure love, even from people who hate Trump or support whoever else or, are from the left. They have been showing me a lot of support as well, and that's what I love.
When the president, I saw the first lady walked in the door first, and then the president came in. That had to be a little surreal for you.
It was. Honestly, it was the greatest honor of my life. It's tough that I came through this situation, but I feel just so incredibly blessed. I don't know how else to say it. I feel so blessed to be here. There's so many worse situations.
But you were really standing for Melania. You weren't standing for the president. You can be honest on this program. By the way, the only reason I can say this to you is because I've met you, and I know you have a great sense of humor. I loved your parents, too, by the way. They were wonderful people.
They are. They're good people, and they were excited to meet them as well, and they're so grateful that they stopped by, and they were so kind to me. Sean, the First Lady and the President, they were so kind to me and so sweet, and they didn't, he didn't come in there just to talk my ear off. He came in there to listen to me and be there for me and tell me whatever I need, that he's there for me.
It is a reassuring thing, and, that somebody takes time out of their day. You said something to me when you were shot. You knew you were shot, but you didn't know you were shot. You didn't even, the pain didn't immediately kick in. But by the way, I've heard that from soldiers before. That's not unusual.
Yeah, I didn't know, obviously I didn't know what to expect or whatnot. I didn't expect to get shot, right? But when I did get hit, I hit the ground immediately, and it's weird. You got hit. It's a weird feeling, because you feel the pressure, and but you don't feel the pain. Your adrenaline just takes over, and I saw the blood, and I saw all of that. But you never know how you're going to react, right? But I was somehow able to stay calm and just, if I didn't, it could have ended a lot worse.
Yeah. Well, listen, it was an honor for me to get to meet you. It's amazing how the country has reacted to you and your story in this meeting with the president. It was an honor to meet your parents. They're wonderful people, and I can see where you got your good looks from. It's definitely your mom. But you have an amazing future, incredible character, and as I told them, they've got to be so proud of you. And for me, it was an honor to meet you. All right, Tom. Listen, I hope I hope you get to New York with your family, and that we get a chance to meet you and again. And I enjoyed meeting you. You're in our thoughts and prayers. All the best to you and your family, and a speedy recovery. Okay, sir.
Thank you. It was an honor meeting you as well, and I do hope I get to meet you again.
That'd be fun. I hope that happens. All right, quick break. Right back. We'll continue.
Information download. Sean Hannity and the breaking news you might have missed today. With Sean's Insider Information. Sean Hannity.
All right, all our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Vegas. I met so many heroes this week, and it's been amazing. We're going to have the very latest details on all of this tonight on Hannity. Our new time, don't forget, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll also be debating the issue of the left wanting to shred the Constitution and take away your gun rights and all the other news of the day. That's Hannity, 9 Eastern. Set your DVR, 9 p.m. Eastern, Fox News Channel. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday, and remember, Vegas strong.